Hey guys, welcome to Marketing Cheat Guides. I have a very special guest that I met down in Denver at a recent talk I was doing with Duct Tape Marketing. His name is Will Watrous. He is the CEO and founder of Structure M, and he's agreed to come here and talk to us. He's running a multi-million-dollar marketing company. He has a unique spin on marketing. Looking forward to interviewing him and sharing his story with you guys. Will, thanks a lot for joining us here on the show today.
Awesome. Thanks, Stuart. Glad to be here.
Perfect. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of a funny story, actually. I was working at a nonprofit in the DC area, and we were at a meeting, and the CEO at the time said, "Guys, I cannot handle marketing anymore. Is there anybody that can help me out a little bit with this?" And so I was dumb enough to raise my hand. So he said, "Great, come down to my office after the meeting." And so I followed him and walked into his office. He proceeded to walk over to the bookshelf, grabbed three 3-inch 3-ring binders. I remember it was like a stack like this big. Handed them to me and said, "Really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Give me a call if you have any questions." And so that's how I jumped into it and wound up figuring it out by doing it. And so that included, a pretty good sized budget, but also a pretty broad scope. So we were doing email marketing, we were doing reputation management, social media, website development, search engine optimization, digital advertising. All of these things are pretty healthy, broad scope marketing plan. And so through the scope of time, just figured out how to do it more and be more effective, and thankfully was able to help that organization grow.
Fantastic. So what were you doing before you took on this marketing portfolio?
Right. So it was actually a children's program. And so I was helping program children's programs or develop children's programs, specifically, teenagers really. So I was working really closely with a large group of leaders who were leading groups of teenagers.
So definitely a bit of a shift.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is my college degree is music performance. I'm a trumpet player by trade. I still play all the time. I love trumpet, but you would think, what a matchup to come from that to marketing. So
that's awesome. So you obviously took over this portfolio. How long did you end up staying in that role, kind of looking after their portfolio for them?
My goodness, quite a few years actually. And at one point, I realized that what I was doing, I could do from anywhere. And at the same time, my wife wanted to go to a college here in Oklahoma. And so I just said, well, let's go do it. So we just picked up and moved and came here to where we are here in Oklahoma. And my wife went to school and graduated. And I continued to manage the marketing remotely. And that's kind of how I actually got into doing it on my own. So I was doing it here. I don't know if you want to jump into that story, but yeah, so I was doing some marketing, and a friend of a friend had actually an auto repair shop. Mm-hmm. And he was struggling with his marketing. And so I just said, well, hey, I do some marketing. I didn't really consider myself an expert by any means or be any authority really, but I knew I could help him with some basic needs. And so I started, and the funny thing is he had an auto repair shop. So I had a truck, and I said, well, tell you what, let me just help you out here. And if my truck breaks, you can just fix it. And so he's a really smart businessman. And he said, no, I want to pay you because if I want you to do something, I want you to have to do it. Yeah. So I said, fine, pay me. And so I think he started paying me like $500 a month to manage his marketing. And so it wound up that this gentleman, who's a great man and a great person, was what I call a hub, meaning that he knew everybody and everybody knew him. And so he, as a small business owner, was connected and networked with dozens and dozens of other small business owners across the city. And so what happened was, I believe really this gentleman, he and his shop, they do great work. They have a great reputation. And so he already had something really good going, which I think is important when you're working with a business. I think it's important that they're actually delivering great value. And so he was doing that, and by nature of that and combination of some marketing projects, he really started growing rapidly. And his friends and buddies and other business owners started saying, hey, what are you doing? You're growing like crazy. And this guy is so funny and gracious and kind. He said, well, I got this guy named Will. And he would tell these business owners, he said, sometimes I have to call Will and tell him to tone it down a little bit because I'm too busy. And so these other business owners were like, oh my gosh, give me his number. And so I started getting these phone calls from other business owners saying, hey, what you're doing for this guy, will you do the same thing for us? And so that's how it all kind of kicked off. So I kind of stepped down from that nonprofit marketing director position and just started taking on small local businesses here in the area and have just grown from there.
And this was back in 2010?
Yeah, like right around the 2009, 2010.
Wow. Okay. So let's look at the evolution. So you started at the $500 a month working for these guys. Were you doing the whole spectrum of digital marketing, or were you working specifically like on an SEO or a PPC or?
Right. Yeah. Well, it started initially with a website design. So this is the funny thing is I had never designed a website. I mean, there were not the tools available that we have today.
Sure.
And although there were some, I think that Homestead by Intuit was one. And I think that's where I actually started. And so I had never built a website before, but for some silly reason, I decided I could help him build a website from scratch. And so I literally like prayed and Googled and like, how do you build a website? Like that's where it literally started. And so I wound up building a website that looked like pretty decent. And at the same time, I decided to invest in HubSpot training at the time. And so back in the day, they would do this kind of onboarding training package. It was big dollars for me. I think I paid like $1,500 or $3,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was a 6 or 12 week thing. I would meet with this gentleman every week, and he basically just taught me a lot about SEO and everything. So, I was not coming from that kind of background. So I really kind of cut my teeth on building websites and doing SEO. So that's where it started. And from there, I quickly started to realize that while this is great and important, there's a lot of other factors that go into a successful marketing program or plan or system or a business plan even. And so by nature, we started to get into things like reputation and client retention. How many clients were they getting back into the shop, let's say at the auto repair shop? Which had to then do with like email marketing, social media, all of these other things. And so after probably maybe a year or so, we started adding a bunch of things. And eventually I was just kind of entirely managing all of his marketing, even direct mail pieces, things like that.
Wow. Okay. And is that something that you brought from the auto shop to kind of the friends that he had referred to? Did you start to build out the same kind of methodology for them where you almost became their outsourced marketing department?
Yeah, exactly. So what I started seeing was that most of these small local businesses had the same set of needs. And it had to do with website, SEO, email marketing, a social media presence, online reputation, digital advertising, AdWords primarily at the time, and now Facebook ads a lot. But I started seeing that they all had these same set of needs. And so I just basically rinsed and repeated this kind of systematic approach to all of their marketing needs. And it worked again and again.
Awesome. So what were some of the early challenges that you had when you went out on your own? I mean, the music background, throw it into the marketing mix, had some success in terms of found the hub, as you called him, started referring clients. What kind of challenges did you kind of face as you went to grow the business?
My goodness, it reads probably like an E-Myth novel, if you're familiar with the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And so a technician, now needing to become a manager, but lacking entrepreneurial and business skills. And so the challenges early on were just that while it was wonderful and right and good to want to help people, to see a need and want to reach out and do something about it, it has to be paired with some business acumen. It has to have, for instance, scalability, management, all the financial controls that need to be in place. So there's a lot to it. It's owning and running a business is a lot more than just having a skill in a particular area. Even if it's marketing, even if you're a marketing consultant, let's say, there's so much more to, I think, growing a successful company than just having those skills. And so those early challenges revolved around me being able to balance and really grow in a weak area, I would say, which is that business skill side of things, being able to read and study and implement all of the business side of things, alongside of all of the marketing. And so there's two worlds kind of converging there. And so that was a lot of struggle.
Awesome. All right. So as you got those skills in place, I mean, obviously that was a journey that's happened over the last, 7-8 years. I'm sure you continue to progress. So when you were bringing in new clients, so a lot of people watching this are probably earlier on in their journey, as I mentioned to you prior to us jumping on. What were some of the ways that you went out to grab business in terms of scaling up your business along that path?
Yeah, so it's been a funny thing in that way because I've seen that the number one driver of our growth has been the quality of the work that we've performed for our current clients. Okay. And so, of course, this loops back to referrals, but that is, in fact, the number one way that we've been growing is referrals. And I think that it is that the driver, again, is that we've been really focused on doing things right. When we were first getting into this, you don't know what you don't know. And we can read articles and listen to podcasts and all of these things. And we would go to like MozCon and Seattle and things like that. So what we found is when we would get around other agencies and companies, we would realize, wow, like we really are doing a good job at this. Like we're doing it the right way. And that was really encouraging because you don't know when you're on your own, like, is this legit? Am I missing some big piece? So I think that it's been a big deal to meet up with other groups, be part of discussion groups like Marketing Cheat Guides. I think is brilliant. Of course, we've been, as you mentioned, members of Duct Tape Marketing. We're with some other associations now like StoryBrand, which is Donald Miller's group, storybrand.com. Highly recommend that. Of course, we've been involved with Moz for a really long time from the beginning. Follow HubSpot, those sorts of things. So some of these authorities have really helped us feel more confident. I'm kind of getting off track from your question there, but it's been a big deal for us. Yeah.
All right. So you joined Duct Tape Marketing. How long have you been part of Duct Tape Marketing?
Man, for probably like 4 years now.
So this is I read Duct Tape Marketing, the original book, a long time ago. So it was full circle to speak at the event, which I thought was awesome. But I'm curious to hear from you kind of all of the tools and IP that kind of brought to your business. 4 years ago kind of put you at 2013. So you were already well on your way developing your business, but you obviously invested in that. Was that a pivotal point for you in terms of seeing systematization, or had you already kind of dialed that in and it just helped take it to a new level?
What had happened was we just started getting overloaded work. So you had asked about bringing on new clients, and I had mentioned that we were focused on doing really high quality work. And what that was causing was great results for our clients, who then couldn't help but tell other people about the great job that we were doing, which then caused other people to come to us. Well, when that growth came, we had, of course, an influx of work. And I have now a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. And so go back 3 or 4 years, of course, they're young children. And I was working a lot, working really hard and really stressed out, honestly, just because of the workload. It was too much. And it was my wife was suffering. My kids were suffering from the results of that. So I realized I need to figure this out because I'm not willing to do this any longer. And so I started researching just the idea of systemization. I realized that systems were the path to freedom. I knew that if we could just simply develop linear sequences that delivered consistent results over time, then I could basically have another person, whether it was a staff member or even an outsourced VA, for example, follows those same steps and get the same results that I would have if I did it, right? So I really dived headlong into systemization, and I think the book that opened the door for me was a book called Work the System by Sam Carpenter. It is a brilliant, he is a brilliant man. It is it's so philosophical, but at the same time extremely practical. It just lays out systemization so well. So I started following him very closely, and as a byproduct, started looking for marketing systems, of course. And so I Googled literally, small business marketing systems, and who pops up? John Jantz, and John Jantz pops up with his duct tape marketing system, and so that's how we kind of connected. And I instantly saw the value. And I think what happened there was I saw that John had done so much work already and developed so many systems. And so the idea is, why reinvent the wheel? We have some good things going here. I had been thinking about systemization, but let's just accelerate it. Let's just plug and play with what he has going on. So that was how we kind of initially got connected. And then since then, it's been a big part of it has been the network itself in terms of the other people. Just like on Marketing Cheat Guides, there's so many people, you're leading the way, but there's dialogue and questions being answered and so much feedback. That community aspect is a big deal.
Awesome. So how big is your team today?
So I have 9, so 10 including me.
Nice. Okay, so now that you've kind of come full circle and you are where you are today, what do you spend your time on leading a team? So, I mean, you've created systems so that other people can kind of repeat what you were doing earlier on at scale now, right? I mean, you've given them the map, they're able to follow the map and get that predictable result, which is obviously delivering value for your clients. So how do you spend your time today in terms of leading your team and driving that vision forward?
Right. Yeah. Great question. So systematizing the marketing side is what happened first, the actual marketing activity that needs to happen. And so now I'm in the process of systematizing all of the business side of things. And what that means is creating workflows, procedures, all of that sort of stuff, and then training and teaching other team members how to work that. And that's where I'm at. We've grown to where we are, and I'm really thankful for that. But we're by no means there. I'm still working. I have to show up, and so I'm not in a passive ownership position yet. But so what I'm doing now is really focusing on things like finance, on investing in the team, developing the team. Some people would call it HR. But it's ongoing. It's ongoing learning, life skills. Even we read books like Getting Things Done by David Allen, which is really practical. We read Scale, which by David Finkel, who you met, I think, in Denver. And so anyway, investing in the team is what I do. So how do I spend my time? I would say probably 70% of my time is what I call on the business work. I've got on the business and in the business. So 30% of my time at this point is in the business. And so that's actively taking care of client situations or things like that. 70% of it has to do with financial systems, strategic networking, reporting. We use quarterly action plans, all of those kinds of activities.
Awesome. All right, so now I'm going to flip over and pick your brain for our audience. I think you're like an invaluable resource to people that are earlier in the journey. So I'm really curious if you could go back in time to an earlier, younger version of yourself 8 years ago. What are some things that you would want to know, right? So some wisdom that you've learned along the way that you can kind of impart with people that are just starting their journey in terms of trying to scale up their business, trying to learn how to, like you said, how to run a business, how to manage a technical kind of skill if they're coming from a technical skill background, how to leverage that and ultimately build a business around them where they're not just working for 5 different companies as a consultant, but they're actually managing a business.
Yeah, great question. A couple of thoughts come to mind. One is that systematize early. Everything that you do. And the funny thing is, me and my personality is I love creating and designing systems. I do not like following them. I just am not like a line upon line detailed, checkbox type of person. I just like to find a problem, create a solution, and then show other people how to use the solution and then move on.
That's the entrepreneurial way. You draw the map, other people follow it. That's why the employees like maps that you're going to build.
Yeah, so I would say systematize early. Be really intentional about designing procedures, tasks, checklists, tools and the reason I got off on that was that you even follow yourself, because I would find myself designing a great system and I'm still the one that needs to work that system. But the next time I come across it, I wouldn't pull out that checklist and just follow it again. I would just wing it again. And so design systems, but then use your own systems, right? Eat your own cooking and make sure that it's on point and accurate, because when it comes time to bring someone else on or even hire out or use a third party, you're going to want to get the same consistent results. And so you'll want to be able to spell that out for them. So I would say that number two, I would say be really conscious of your work-life balance and don't go crazy. I know some people, they work really hard, and I understand that to a degree. But I think a common issue in our culture today and sort of our society today is that the answer is just to work longer, harder, and that somehow that proves your commitment and that proves your values by putting in 100 hours a week. Somehow that makes you demonstrates your willingness to sacrifice, and I question that, because I think that it is completely plausible for us to be able to have times of rest and restoration and relaxation and other activities and enjoy life and enjoy our families and our relationships and still work really hard, but just work smarter. And so I would encourage people to draw really healthy boundaries with how much they work, so that they don't sacrifice the big picture for the immediate goal.
Awesome. All right. So in terms of going out and getting business now, for people that are just doing it, what are some tactical things you would recommend for people that are trying to land their first, second, or third clients, how they should approach that lead gen kind of process?
Oh my goodness, start.
Yeah.
I have this firm belief that anything you need is in arm's reach. There is nothing that's being kept back from any of us. So there's so many funnel systems. I mean, there's so many platforms. There's so many tools. I mean, even in Marketing Cheat Guides, you've laid it all out. It's just a matter of grabbing it and start doing something. Just start it. And I know that's kind of a broad answer to your specific question, but I would start there by just saying start. Grab Stuart's system, sign up for your class. You've got the courses all laid out. Just plug in and start doing it, and then you'll find your rhythm, you'll find your groove, and you'll find your niche as you start moving forward. But I think I would say just start somewhere. Now, to get more specific, our experience has relied heavily on referrals and networking as well. So I mentioned that our first client as an entrepreneur started sending me other clients, but the reason was that I did really good quality work for him, and he got great results. And so that opened up the door to so much more business, because now I could say to this gentleman, hey, do you know anyone else you feel like is struggling? Or, hey, if you meet someone else that you feel like we'd be a good fit for, or you see what we're doing here, let me know about them. Love to help them. Because that warm referral lead, my goodness, is so easy. I joke, even today, most of our business is referral business, and I tease other business owners by saying, we don't sell, we just sign people up. People call and we sign them up, and that's it. I mean, there's no selling involved, because they're already sold by the time they get to us. And so I think networking and referrals is a really nice path to get started on out the door. And beyond that, you've got so many resources out there, whether it's finding a pain point with reputation or finding a pain point with social media presence and engagement. There's a lot of paths to take, but I would just say pick one and get started.
Awesome. So you mentioned you mentioned StoryBrand, you mentioned Moz, HubSpot. You gave us a couple of books in terms of work the system and scale. Any other resources you think some people should be looking at? Obviously, they should go check those out. But anything else you want to mention in terms of things that you follow that others may want to take a look at?
Right. So I'm shifting in my particular place. There's a company called The Great Game of Business.
Yep.
And so I'm moving in that direction. Where we're at, because I want the entire team. There's so much more brain power in the entire team than I have in my little head to figure everything out. So I want to engage everybody and all of our resources and invest in everybody. So I'm fine if someone on the team leaves in a year and starts their own business. That's a huge compliment to me, because of the way architected the business, someone else can step in and start producing, with a similar skill set and start producing. So I'm not scared of that. But as a beginner, starting out, man, I don't think I could overstate the idea of systemization. Systemization and niching or niching, however you'd like to say it. Those two things are very powerful and I think they work hand in hand, because obviously if you have a niche, you can repeat. Right. You know the industry, you know the client, you know their pain points, and so it makes it so much more efficient to scale it. But I would study resources along those two lines, systemization and finding pain points within a niche.
Perfect. So on a softer note, what's something you've spent, let's say somewhere between $100 and $500 on in the last month that you're enjoying? A good purchase. Doesn't have to be marketing related.
Oh, man. So we have been flying RC airplanes.
Okay.
I've got a 6-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old boy.
Yep.
And technology has come to the point for now we're like $169. You can buy an RC airplane that has a GPS built into it. So you set this thing on the ground, and there's beginner, intermediate, and advanced mode. You put it in beginner mode, you put it on the ground, you literally hit the throttle, and it just goes up into the air, right? It has a geofence, so when it gets more than 400 feet away from you, it just turns around and comes back and starts circling at like 65 feet above your head. And there's a panic button. So if you start, and I did this the other day like 3 times, like literally feet from the ground, like it was totally nosedive. I hit the panic button and it instantly levels out and climbs back up and starts circling it. So it's been so much great time with my family. The kids, my 6-year-old daughter can land this thing, land an RC airplane. So that's been a lot of fun for us.
Awesome. I've never heard of that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. Guys, I hope you got something from this video. If you did, definitely hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions for either of us, drop them below. We'll make sure to circle back and answer any questions you have. And Will, thanks a lot for taking the time and joining us today on the show.
Awesome. Love it, Stuart. Keep it up.
Perfect. Thanks.